thank you to everyone who is here. And as the saying goes, on an occasion like this, thank you to everyone who is not here, but is here in the future somewhere. And because the Torah goes out, the Torah of the future goes out to those who are here and those who are not here, as Moshe Rabbeinu made clear in the first place, in the archetypal reception of the Torah. Okay, I'm going to go back to this view. And okay, so I'm very excited to get into this Shiur, and I hope we can get in what all that I have planned. I'm sure that we will one way or the other, but a lot of this year is going to be a Torah that was left for us by Rabbeinu Reb Nachman, and is printed in the Likutei Moharan as Torah number 13. So if anyone wants to look at it more deeply later, that's where it is. It's Torah Yud Gimel in the Likutei Moharan, part 1. So I think, first of all, I want to begin with let me just move this around. I want to begin with an invocation, and then I'll make a blessing. But first of all, I want to invoke, reaching out to the ultimate highest of the high, to the Supreme One, beyond all names and forms, and to all of the other gods that preside in all universes, those known to us and those not known to us, and to all of their agents and assistants, all angelic beings, all positive forces in every universe that we know of, every universe that we don't yet know of. I'm reaching out to my teacher, who is myself in the world that is coming. And I'm reaching out to all teachers in all worlds, in all traditions, those known to me and those not known to me. And I'm reaching out to the teachers who are the true selves of all those who are presenting themselves and sharing in this transmission for the sake of this Merkava, for the sake of this mandala. I'm reaching out to the holiest of the holy Baal Shem Tov, and to all the tzaddikim in Gan Eden, and to all ascended masters in every vehicle, every spiritual vehicle known to me and not known to me, to all their assistants, to all the beneficent forces and positive forces in the universe that are channeling to us with will and blessing the energy that we need to contribute what we can to the further evolution of this earth, and to help it play the role that it is meant to play in the evolution of the entire cosmos. Thank you so much for your help and for being with us today. Amen, amen. Ken Yeh Ratzon. And now, since we are here on Shavuot, well, I want to say, first of all, L'Kuvet Shavuot, that everybody knows that Shavuot is the yortzeit of the Heilige Baal Shem Tov. And so we know that the opening in the cycle of the year through which the divine light descends for our benefit, if we can only attune ourselves to it, is enhanced particularly by the energy of the neshamas of those tzaddikim, those spiritual masters, those bodhisattvas, whose souls ascended through that portal of that particular day. And so it's a special blessing for us because we are an anaf, we are a branch of the lineage and legacy of the Baal Shem Tov. And of his great-grandson, Reb Nachman of Breslov. But today we benefit especially from the light of Shavuot, which is the light of the portal for the ascent of the Baal Shem Tov, whose lineage we're directly connected to through the graciousness of Reb Salman of blessed memory. So just to say one thing about the Baal Shem Tov, in the Sefer Baal Shem Tov al Torah, there is an introductory section which is kind of biographical and tells stories about the Baal Shem Tov that come from different rabbis, what they thought of the Baal Shem Tov. And there's one from the most powerful one comes from Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk, the Vitebsker Rebbe, who was made Aliyah, was one of the early Hasidim to move to the Galilee in the 18th century. And it was, of course, he was a very close Talmud of the Maggid Mezrich. And he said about the Baal Shem Tov that the Baal Shem Tov was unique, was absolutely unique. And what was the uniqueness of the Baal Shem Tov? It was that he said that V'tigzar Omer Vayikamlach, that he could he had the power of the prayer of the Baal Shem Tov was so awesome that it could overcome Gzeirat Din. I would say if the circumstances, the dinim that could be over a certain person, if a person has, you could say vernacularly, they don't have such good karma, and the causes are in place where it's virtually impossible for them to avoid an imminent fate, or more extensively. But even if the Gzar Din had already been established, the original Rebbe said there are a lot of great tzaddikim in the world in the time of the Baal Shem Tov and his Talmidim, and for a couple generations until Hasidism became something else. But the first, the people around the Baal Shem Tov and around the Maggid, and up until Reb Shneir Zalman and Reb Nachman, were all very powerful spiritual presences, and they all had the power to sweeten the dinim, to make things better in the world, to turn negativity into positivity. But the difference between the Baal Shem Tov was that they could only do it before the Gzeirah Adin. There's a certain point when it comes too late, like nobody really, unless you're a Baal Shem Tov who comes like once in a, very rarely, you can't, it's already too late. So that was the power that was attributed to the Baal Shem Tov. And the Rizhiner Rebbe, who was the grandson of Maggid Mezrich, explained what was the basis of the power of the Baal Shem Tov, that he could overturn Gzeirah. And he said, he's in explaining it, he quoted from the Gemara, the Babylonian Talmud, Shabbos 156a, has a famous statement, says, Ein mazal Yisrael. And which most people who actually don't understand this, but it's the conventional translation, is that Israel is not subject to to the power of the stars. It doesn't have a horoscope, so to speak, and it isn't. Its condition and its presence is not affected by a conventional reading of the forces that are being emanated into the universe through the symbolic system of the stars and planets. But actually, the Arizal of Yitzchak Luria said that's really not the right meaning. That's not the deep inner meaning. The deep inner meaning of Ein Mazal L'Yisrael is Al Tikra Ein Ella Ayin. And so really we should read it, Ayin is the Mazal. And what is Ayin? So we have to explain two things. Ayin is the Mazal for Yisrael. And let's just say for now that Yisrael means Yisrael Baal Shem Tov. And we could say that, yes, if one has the merit to be connected, to be Yisraeli is really a very, very tremendous honor. It's not something that you get just because of your mother's ancestry or biology or anything like that. It has to do with a merit, a zichut, that comes from past lives in which a person has worked their way up through the ascension that is possible and desired for the human souls in this planet who take incarnation in this planet. If you get to a certain level, of which the epitome was Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, then you are not subject to astrology. Then you transcend whatever your birth star is, whatever the planets you're ascendant, all of that stuff no longer predicts or bounds your actions and your power within this world, because you are then on the level where the mazal is the ayin. We say ayin, is the and what is ayin? No, ayin is defined loads of ways in Kabbalah, and especially in Hasidus. But what's relevant for Shavuot, and this is directly relevant to Shavuot, is that ayin is the level of Keter. Not ayin of Chachma, there's the ayin of Keter. The ayin of Keter, the no thinginess of Keter, the connection to the unlimited of Keter, which is represented by two parts of Fim in the Kabbalah, one called Arich Einpin. Arich Einpin means the consciousness of infinite patience, the consciousness that knows no anger, the consciousness that is beyond any perspective from which anger could manifest. That's to say, in contrast to Zeir Anpin, which is a HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is really, what is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is really the solar logos for the earth. You see, so which is what we're relating to the solar logos and the goddess of the earth, which is the sun and the moon. That's the sun and the moon of our solar system, which is only a tiny, 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 tiny speck within a vastness of solar systems, galaxies, universes. Who knows what's out there? Amok, amok, miyim se'enu. It is so deep. Who could possibly reach any sense of how vast it is? And here we are. We're concentrated into this solar system, and specifically on this one planet, where there's an evolutionary process taking place. And it has a long way to go. Now, I want to add right here that it's very important for all of us to remember as much as possible one of the principal teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. The whole tradition of the lineage of the Baal Shem Tov is the Midrash, which says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu nitava diru b'tachtani. The Blessed Holy One is trying to reveal itself as a presence in this lowest of all emanated aspects of the cosmos. Let's say here in the Earth zone, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to make its presence felt. And that is the basis of the evolution of the soul on this planet, is really that is the process of the evolution of the souls, to spiritualize the incarnated being, that ascension to the light from which all souls come into this world. That's the process of evolution, human evolution. And in the process, HaKadosh Baruch Hu merges with the Shekhinah, and then you have the Yichud. You have then the earth becomes what it is meant to evolve into. Now, I want to just say, as a believer in the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, that if Hashem says that that's what the divine will wants, I have no doubt whatsoever that this is going to happen. Which doesn't mean I'm saying it's happening right this second. I'm just saying that whatever it looks like, I have no doubt this is going to happen. Yeah. Let's say this earth at some point is going to become what it is meant to evolve into being, but it will take the evolution of individual souls in order for that to occur. And maybe even further evolution on the earth. I don't believe that the earth's evolution is anywhere near finished, or that there's any reason to think so, just because some scientists thought it would be a good thing to believe in. So I don't think we're that far along in our evolution. We have a long way to go, and in a sense, that's not a bad thing, because then we have a reason to be here. Thank God we're all here. Okay, so the Baal Shem Tov's light is shining through. The Baal Shem Tov was the one who had a neshama that descended into this world from the solar logos as a representation and reflection of the ayin, of the not limitedness, of the not limited, the unlimited power that is beyond the stars. And thus, he's on the level, the original Rebbe says the Baal Shem Tov is on the level of Ayin Mazali Israel. So why I say all this, we should remember this because on Shavuot, we are celebrating not only Matan Torah, but a particular stage in the giving of the Torah of the future, which is an ongoing process. The Torah is always being, it was said that Torah La'atid, the Torah that belongs to the future, it's not only the Torah of the future, but it's the future's Torah, right? The Torah La'atid. Now, what does that mean? We're getting the Torah from the future. And that is an asmachta. Do I say that if these Baal Shem Tov said, not only the Baal Shem Tov, but going all the way back to the Midrash, that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu's desire is for this earth to become a dwelling place for divinity, to be spiritualized, to reach its full evolution. And if the Torah comes from the future, then we can be certain that that's going to happen because it's coming from the future. The future is pulling us. The future, which is beyond the limitations of our understanding, which takes place within the contours of time and space. But the Torah is beyond time and space. So what do you think it was? Before time and space, to the left of time and space, to the right of time? It's beyond all time and space. And we are moving. The Torah is pulling us in the direction that it wants us to go. And that's what evolution actually is. The planet is becoming what it's meant to be in this vast cosmic evolution. And it is becoming what it's meant to be through the cooperation of those beings who the planet itself has evolved in such a way that they can cooperate and participate in this evolutionary process. It's pretty beautiful. It's a pretty beautiful. So that means if we tune into the Baal Shem Tov, we should remember that we're tuning into this the one time of the year, really, that window is open. That door, the door to the Ayin Mazali Israel, it's only open on this one day. So on this one day, the deeper we can get, the higher we can get, the clearer we can get, the more power we have to wipe out masses of negativity that are part of the karmic process, and which I'll say really are part of Hashgacha Pratit. But on Shavuot, we're dealing with the mystery of Hashgacha Pratit, that's divine providence. There are two dimensions of divine providence. There's one-way Hashgacha, and there's the two-way Hashgacha. The two-way Hashgacha is another name. It's the traditional name for what we call now the feedback loop. Feedback loop, that's the double Hashgacha, double divine providence means not just God sees everything in every place at every time, but God sees itself seeing everything in every place and every time. And that's what it means to have Hashgacha, the Hashgacha Shlema, which is what we want to have. And that's what this lesson, which we're going to move into very quickly. I'm just going to tell one quick story, and then we're going to go into the Likutei Moharan. And this story was told by the Rizhiner Rebbe told this story in the Shabbos before Hanukkah, not before Shavuot. Now, keep in mind that here's the thing, it's very important to know that And Shavuot, the best way to do Shavuot, of course, is to go through all 49 steps of the Omer, of Sfirot Omer, but there's always a b'diavad, right? There's what you should do and what you still can do because so many people won't do it. And because the Blessed Holy One is the kind, it always gives us another possibility. Just you don't tell anybody about it. You're not supposed to think about how you don't have to do it until you need to think about what am I going to do now? Okay, so really the most important part of the whole Omer period, one is counting the first day and counting the last 3 days. If you really tuned into the Omer on the first day and the last 3 days, you can reach Midbar Sinai. From Midbar Sinai, you're in a place where you can receive the Torah. Now, in the Shabbos before Shavuot, the Rishner said one year, he told a story, and he said the story was once there was a king, and the king had a palace, and the palace had 4 walls, and the king said, I want this palace to be the most beautiful palace that there ever was. And so I'm going to get not one artisan, but I'm going to hire 4 artisans, one for each wall. And each one will be given the opportunity to do their magic to the highest degree of artistry they could make the most beautiful wall in the world that they're capable of making. So of the 4 artists, 3 of them got the message, they heard the command, and they immediately went to work and got their materials, and they started painting and sculpting and making everything tremendous that they could, and did a beautiful job. Now, the 4th one didn't do anything. And the king said, you got to get this done by a certain day. Otherwise, it's too late. So the 4th one didn't do anything. The other 3 did everything they possibly could. They learned everything they could. They made the most beautiful walls for the palace of the king. 4th one woke up 3 days before the deadline and said, oh my God, the deadline's coming 3 days. I don't know how to do this. I haven't done it. I'm not prepared. There's no way. How am I going to do it in the time remaining? He says, there's no way. So he started really feeling deeply about how he had failed to listen to, he had failed to respond to what was asked of him by the king. And it came to him in the depths of his despair. He said, okay, there's a certain kind of paint, and I'm just going to go and get this one kind of paint. I'm going to paint my whole wall this paint, because this paint has the capacity to reflect. It does nothing but reflect. It has no color at all, but it reflects everything. It's like a pure mirror. And so he painted his whole wall with nothing but this coating that reflects whatever comes into it, and he covered it over with a veil. Reb Nachman told the story like this. So he said the king came in when the deadline was up, and started looking and saw these 3 incredibly beautiful walls. So this wall, one is more beautiful than the other. Everything you could possibly imagine, these artists had managed to depict on the walls of this palace. Then he looked at the 4th wall, and all he saw was nothing. He saw a screen that was covered up, and all he could see was darkness underneath it. So he turned to the 4th artisan and he said, well, what do you have on your wall? I don't see anything. The artisan pulled the screen down. The sun was shining into the palace, and everything that was on the three walls, everything beautiful, everything wonderful appeared on the fourth wall. And that's the story. Okay, so you got to take that in deep. It's everything that all the three, the one on the fourth one did nothing. But in the wall of the fourth one was everything that all the other three had labored to produce. Okay, so that's the story. Now I want to go to Likutei Moharan. I hope we have time to get through as much of this as possible, because this is just an amazing teaching. So first of all, I want to make a bracha. My bracha for the Torah is like this. Baruch atah havaya Ruach Haaretz asher kitshanu be'orotav umigale al yedenu haTorah la'atid, which we can translate, you Havaya are so blessed, you who are the spirit and the source of all life, who makes us holy through your lights and reveals the Torah that belongs to the future through us. Amen. So I want to go to Likutei Moharan 13. It's 13 in the Likutei Moharan. Reb Nachman wrote this out himself, not Reb Nosson. So this actually is one of the Torahs that comes directly from Reb Nachman, and it's on the verse Ashrei Ha'am Yodeh Truah. This is Psalms 89:16. Ashrei Ha'am, fortunate are people who have knowledge, who have dot, the dot of Truah. Dot is a consciousness, who have the consciousness of the shofar blast, the power of the shofar, which wipes out din, the power of chesed, the blast of chesed, who can bring the blast of chesed and offset the negativity. Be'or panecha yihalechon. The verse goes on, in the light of your presence, they move through time and space. In the illuminated state, they move through time and space. And here's what he says. Lahamshich hashgacha shlema. It's not possible to have, produce, to hamshich, to draw down a complete hashgacha, providence in its complete form, unless one overcomes what he calls tavat mamon. Tavat mamon is the, you would say, the essential will to power. The will to power to, in whatever form, to acquisitions, to which is the default mode for human beings, from which we have the opportunity to evolve. It's the evolution has to occur from there, but we're created already with this will to power, which seems to be more or less the same will that Schopenhauer was speaking about, but he didn't have the solution, right? And of course, he's the one who influenced Nietzsche, who also didn't have the solution, right? No, which is not to knock them, because I have great respect for them. So I think they did bring down they're pretty good, some pretty good light, but not as good as the light that comes from the Baal Shem Tov and Rebbe Nachman. So this will, if you want to have complete, you can't have hashgacha shlema as long ad shelo yishaber tavat mamon, as long as you are being driven by the will to power and acquisition, personal possessions, and so forth, then you can't draw down hashgacha shlema. As if you're out for yourself primarily, your own enrichment, you're basically in a condition that blocks the complete hashgacha, which I said before. What is hashgacha shlema? Hashgacha shlema is the feedback loop hashgacha. There's no doubt that for every Hasidim holds that there's hashgacha pratit, which means that every Hasid holds that God sees us at every single moment. The only question is whether we see God or not, whether we see that God is seeing us at any particular moment. And when we see that God is seeing us, that's the hashgacha shlema. Just think about that for a second. What is the perfect divine providence is not only God seeing us, but we know that God is seeing us. We see God seeing us. And say when God is seeing us, seeing God. And Reb Nachman is saying you can't have this hashgacha neither for yourself or in the world, that it's which is ultimately what we want. We want the earth to evolve to its ultimate potential, to the way it's meant to be, and if it evolves, if and when it evolves to its ultimate evolutionary state, it would have the characteristic of hashgacha shlema. It would be in a condition of and that's that the sea, the land, the whole space, every aspect of the earth and its various fields, its that are dependent on the energy that comes from the solar logos, would be completely completely conscious, would be completely aware of the source, with nothing preventing that source from being aware of itself in every place and every time and every condition. Now the Zohar says, Ruach Haaretz, there's a ruach, there is a vibration that comes down from above. I mean, so it comes down from above all the parts of him, comes down through the agency of Adam Kadmon, and it comes down the Shachech Hamima Deliba, and it has the capacity to soften this egocentric heat of desire. So this heat, the heat of the heart. The heart is the heart gets excited. We see a consciousness that hasn't evolved at all. They're just, I want this, I want that. If I see this, my heart, I have to have this, I have to have that. It's a fire in the heart, whatever it's for. But there is a healing, there is an energy of healing that comes down from above and it can soften the energy of the heat of the heart. And when the heart receives that influence, it receives it with a joy. It comes when the heart receives that cooling energy that tones down the out of control will to have, which is the default mode of it produces a tremendous joy in the heart, which is called the joy of the music of the Levites. Because why? Because what were the Levim in the temple, what were they doing? They did music, but not just any old music. You know, we have a lot of music. Unfortunately, a lot of the music that's in this world is not a bechina of the Niguna de Levite. On the contrary, we have music in this world that it increases the chamima de liba. it makes people more crazy. It doesn't come and soften the heart, sweeten the judgments, and produce an inner joy, but it enhances and increases the desire for more, 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 more. But the service in the temple that was represented by the musicians in the temple, the Levim, what they were producing a music that heals the heart. And that's the ruach, that is the energy, the ruach, the vibrational field that descends from above. And on the earth plane, this ruach expresses itself as tzedakah. So that's what it means to give something to somebody. You know, the Rebbe Meir, who I consider to be the Tzaddik Hador, Rebbe Meir Morgenstern of Yerushalayim, said that if anybody comes up to you and asks you for help, you should know that God sent them to you. And that is an opportunity for you to heal your heart, to soften the self-serving default will, the power, this tavat mammon in the heart. So you should be on the lookout for that, because that is one of the ways that we can bring down, that we can enhance the process of evolution on the earth, so that it becomes a place where the hashgacha shlema is manifest. Okay, so ruach hazeh b'chinatzot tzedakah, and that cools the heat of the desire for wealth and power. I'm going to have to paraphrase this, so we'll never get through it. Now, what Reb Nachman says, the music of let's say Levitical music, the music of Levim, he says is a bechina masa matan be'amunah. Is if you can overcome, or let's say transform this tavat mammon, this self-serving desire to enrich oneself at others' expense, which is not to say that there isn't a righteous way to enrich yourself. Of course, there are righteous ways to receive what you need. But that is called, what is that called? That is called Masa Matan Be'emunah. So you're doing business in the state of Emunah. That doing business in the state of Emunah is not doing business out of the paranoia and fear that I don't have enough. Masa Matan Be'emunah means I have faith that everything that is meant to come to me will come to me. And it isn't going to come to me anymore if I stress out about it. If I worry about and stress out about it, I'm not actually going to get any more than than I'm meant to get in terms of the conditions of hashgacha at any particular time. And why is that called music? It is related to the music of the Levites, because the music of the Levites, you could say, is the way of dancing through life. It's like your business is not a cutthroat operation out to get you some advantage. It's just the way that you give and take. Give and take is a dance. It's a dance that from you I receive, to you I give, to you I give, from you I receive. That's Masa Matan Be'emunah. As simple as that. I mean, that's what it's called in this symbol system of the Torah, Masa Matan Be'emunah. So I'm giving and taking. I am giving, I am taking. I'm receiving, I'm giving. My giving is receiving, my receiving is taking, because I'm doing it be'emunah. What is the emunah? It's that I know that I am here within the process of the evolution of the earth, which is going to happen one way or the other, because that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. And it can happen better if I align myself with it. It'll be better for me, better for everyone else, and better for the whole world. So I'm aligning myself with that process. That's the emunah. I have emunah that that's what's happening. I don't care what it looks like. That's got to be what's happening. So I'm living out of that place of Masal Matan Be'emunah. And what is that called? It's Kamoshikatu Sa'u Zimra. It's musical. Raise up melody, utanutaf, and play your drum. That's the joy, produces the joy which is called Zesh Samech Bechelko. A person is happy with their lot. Whatever you get. This Reb Nachman wrote stories about that. It was like the Tam V'Hacham, where the main character is the shoemaker. He makes these shoes and he just makes them very simply, and he doesn't worry about how many sells, how many doesn't sell. And it comes out that he reaches a higher level in the end to his Masah Matan Be'emunah than the Hacham, who studies everything, figures out all the angles, how his business could be more successful, but and looks down on the Tom, thinks he's just a fool. But in the end, the Tom, the one who's Samech Bechelko, reaches the higher level. And this is also the secret meaning of Ketoret. This means the aroma, the aroma, the power of Mashiach consciousness is most present in the sense of smell. And so because it's the essence of the Ketoret, there's two things about the Ketoret that are really special. One is that it contains the most wonderful aromas, the materials that have the most wonderful aroma, and also that have the most terrible aromas. You can't have a really good Ketoret if you just say, okay, I'm only going to have the good smells. A really good Ketoret, it has to have good smells and not good smells. The combination, if it's blended right, it reaches it connects the neshama to Mashiach consciousness, which is the consciousness that puts everything right. That's the consciousness of each and every one of ourselves in the future. And Ketoret in Aramaic, that has the same root as Kesher in Ivrit, which means connection. So it's what connects us up with the reality that is beyond what we are seeing. So Keter, this incense, is Hit Galut Mashiach. It reveals Mashiach consciousness. And Mashiach consciousness blots out, it just obliterates totally this Chemdat HaMamon, the love for wealth and power and so forth, and self-serving interests is completely wiped out. And when that is wiped out, the person functions on the level Masal Matan Be'emunah, as you're still doing everything. You are not a zombie. You are not a non-entity. You are an embodied being, but an embodied being who is working for the evolution of the planet. And that is to say, you are in a state of service, which is really what Avodah means. It's the service of the temple. You're serving the interests of the temple. What is the interest of the temple? The interest of the temple is to produce a place for the Shekhinah to present herself within. And the temple can be likened to the Armona, the king. In the story, the temple has the 4 walls. The 3 walls are already prepared, and the 4th wall is waiting for us to pull the cord that reveals the power that we have to reflect the beauty that's already there on the three walls that we have waiting for us. Now, here's a very important point. As v'chol zman sheyesh avodah zarah zot shel mamon ba'olam charon af ba'olam. This is directly related to the issue of hashgacha. Why don't we have hashgacha? Even though we do have hashgacha pratit, nobody's going to deny that, because if you deny that, well, let me tell you a funny story. A funny story, there isn't a Gemara, there's a place in the Gemara where it says whenever you teach Torah, the Rab, whoever's teaching the Torah, should make sure to tell some jokes. And so I'm saying in the memory of my dear friend, Reb Yitzchak Buxbaum, Olav Shalom, he was very much into the level of telling jokes. In fact, he used to call me up from time to time. And he'd say, Reb Moshe, I'm just calling to tell you a joke. And that was it. He would tell me a joke, and that would be the call. So now the whole inyan of the joke, you say the Torah, the joke. This is a very deep thing. Listen to this. The Torah, the joke, it comes from the Gemara. There's a Gemara that says, whenever a Rav is going to give a Shiur in Torah, they have to remember to tell at least one joke. In fact, you should tell a joke before you tell the Torah. Why? Because you have to open the heart chakra first. Sweeten the dinim. You have to be in that place where your heart is open. Otherwise, because you need an open heart to receive the Torah. So now the joke is, so the Gemara says, okay, so Matan Torah comes from God. What was the joke that God told? What joke did God tell before relieving the Torah? The joke was, he said, if you receive the Torah, mutav, that will be great. And if you don't, this is from Pesach 88a, if anybody wants to look up the source, V'im lav, sham tehei kvurateh. But if you don't, if you're not willing to receive the Torah, this is going to be your grave. So what's the joke? There's a sages say, the Gemara says, so what's the joke? It doesn't sound very funny. Because God said either if you'll accept the Torah, good for you, it'll be great. And if you don't, you're just gonna die right on the spot. The joke is that the neshamas never can die. They're not going to die. There's no way they could die. There's no way you can receive Torah and die. Whether you want to, it's ba'al korchecha. You have no choice in the matter. Because the Torah is the very reality of every neshama. And so that's the joke. It was a joke because it couldn't be true. Okay, so Reb Nachman says, Kolzman, I hope somebody thinks that's funny. You have to get it, that either if you receive this Torah, it's going to be great for you, and if not, there is a level that if you don't receive it, and this is the way I understand it, there's another Gemara says that tzaddikim are more alive after their death than when they're in this world. That's why we have invocations. We have an invocation to the Heilige Baal Shem Tov, to Reb Nachman, to Reb Zalman, to whoever you like, who's ascended beyond this world. There is a place where they will help us if we ask them to. But if the neshama, if the embodied being in a particular iteration, because here the ultimate joke is that every single aspect of the world soul is going to fully evolve sooner or later. But in any particular iteration of the gift of the Torah of the future, if that particular incarnation is not able to receive it, then for that incarnation, they don't have the life of the tzaddik. They're not going to be able to receive the blessings that come from above. So he says here what? Calls manshia, as long as they're this. So what is important here is as long as there is avodah zarah in the world, charon af ba'olam, that's the Torah principle. As long as there's avodah zarah in the world, which is as long as human consciousness is in a form where it doesn't recognize its true nature. And its true nature is hashgacha pratit. Its true nature is that it's a reflection of all the powers and glory of that from which it came, that belongs to the Almighty. As long as it doesn't know that, it is running after other things that it thinks are good. It's running after all the wrong things. It has desires for all the wrong things. And what he's doing here in this teaching, he's saying, and he says it elsewhere in the Kuti Maharan, the epitome of avodah zarah is the tavat mammon, is that itself, that the egocentric desire to separate itself from the good of the whole, from the good of the totality, and to seek to enhance its own power and needs according to what appears to itself to be good, but it's just called a sickness. That's called the sickness of seeing the sick as good and the good as sick. They'll say that if somebody is dancing to the music of the Levites, then the person who is under the power of the Tavat Mammon will think that that person is sick. But fakartu, it's actually exactly the opposite. That's the person that's well. The person who is thinks they have to be worried at every moment about their own, what they consider to be their own self-interest. That's the one who's really needs the healing. So he says, as long as you have that in the world, that kind of avodah zarah, then there's charon af ba'olam. Charon af ba'olam means that the hashgacha is not complete. And if the hashgacha is not complete, which depends on this bitul shel avodah zarah, which is getting rid of this sickness, which when it is eliminated, then the charonaf is eliminated from the world, meaning basically that's called Ruach Haaretz and Mashiach consciousness. If Mashiach were to come, if Mashiach consciousness established itself here in any particular space and time, then the entire world would be full of knowledge of God, would be full of cooperation, full of love, full of mutual participation in whatever further evolution still needed to be addressed. But if it's not, as long as you have this, then you will have conflict in the world, you will have wars, you will have, because that's what self-interest does. It separates one out from another, and then and so he's saying that avodah zarah is the key. Which avodah zarah is a form of consciousness in which reality is not being worshipped and blessed and surrendered to, but some kind of idol, some kind of mind construction based on a misconception of the nature of reality, becomes the deity, becomes what one thinks is most important. Okay, so let me skip down a little. But when this Ruach, this spirit, when this the spirit that can, the energy, the power that can calm and soothe and cool the heart manifests in a certain place, in a certain person, it is it is an expression, it is a manifestation of chesed. Mashiach consciousness is an emanation of chesed on the earth. The Torah says in the Psalm 18, it says, "Va'oseh chesed l'mashiach," is the cosmic power makes chesed for Mashiach consciousness. Mashiach consciousness comes as a flow of chesed, and when this chesed is manifested, yitmashech hadat, that the presence of chesed produces the consciousness of the knowledge of God. That's called dat or das, and that is related to that is what's required for building the temple. And so, Aniva berov chazdecha vovetecha, I'll come to you. The Shekhinah will, it's in a great manifestation of chesed, I will come to your temple. That's the temple. You have to remember that Reb Nachman's most secret teachings, which he wasn't able to publicly reveal during his lifetime, which were preserved by as an esoteric teaching by a very, very small number of Breslovers and only revealed in the last decade or so, comes as true teachings about Mashiach. And one of the key points that he made is that he said that when Mashiach comes, that's to say, in the nature of Mashiach consciousness, the entire earth is the land of Israel. They say the land of Israel, Eretz Yisrael, is not some specific place that some people think it is, but it is, the entire earth is the land of Israel. Meaning that Mashiach consciousness sees that the entire earth is the Holy Land. Every single speck of it, every single spot of it. And by the same token, there isn't like one place where the temple is, that people should go there and kill each other over who should who has the rights to it. That's because that itself, it's clear, is an expression of Tavat Mammon. Exactly what brings Charonaf to the world. Means it increases conflict, hatred, contestation, v'chule v'chule. But actually, what Mashiach consciousness shows us is that wherever you are is a bechina of sal na'alecha me'al raglecha. Just take your shoes off, because the land that you're standing on, Admat Kodesh, is the Holy Land. You are standing right where you are in the Holy Land if you have Mashiach consciousness. But if you don't have Mashiach consciousness, which we do all have, because the question is, can we have it before? We have it because we have it. It's waiting for us as who we are in the future. And some of us are already in the future. So I'll tell you another joke that I've been waiting to tell for some time. This is a joke about Yogi Bhajan. He used to live in New Mexico around here. And I wouldn't be surprised if some people that I know probably knew Yogi Bhajan. But anyway, for better or worse, I'm not judging Yogi Bhajan. I'm just telling his story because I think it's a good one. You know, Yogi Bhajan used to wear the wand of the most traditional Sikh way of dressing and which was very unfamiliar to Americans when he started handling here in the United States. And Yogi Bhajan, he used to travel all over, and he'd go from, because he had followers, he set up centers all over, and he'd go from one to the other. And whenever he'd come into a town, his Hasidim would go to the airport to meet him. And so he's in all these airports. One time he was came into the airport. I'm not sure what city it was. I think it was somewhere in the Midwest. Came into an airport in the Midwest, and he said, and somebody came up to him. They saw him sitting there waiting for his flight in the airport, and they came up to him and said, "Where are you? Where the hell are you from?" And Yogi Bhajan just looked him in the eye, and he said, "I'm from the future." That's the story. He said, "I'm from the future." Okay, so some of us are already here from the future. And it might look kind of weird to the ones that don't know, but ultimately the future, we're all going to get there. All the neshamas are going to get there. Some of us are already there. If you're already there, then you can be one of the, you can bring the Torah, the future Torah, the Torah of the future you can bring here because you're in the future. So this is the building of the temple. This is the one to finish that point. The building of the temple doesn't have to, means wherever you are, you build the temple by crazy. Thank you, Karen. To build the temple right where you are by manifesting chesed, by manifesting love and kindness, by giving tzedakah with your very being, by being an expression of tzedakah, of generosity, kindness, and love, by burning yourself up as incense, which spreads the fragrance of Mashiach consciousness wherever you are. That energy that you are producing in that very place is called binyan habayit. You're building the temple right where you are. Each and every one of us is building the temple right where we are, or we can be doing that. And then Reb Nachman says, this is the very revealing of the Torah of the future. You're doing that. That is bringing down the Torah of the future, which is explained in the Zohar says in the future. The Torah of Atika Stima, of the concealed Atik, will be revealed because it depends on two cities. What we mean by cities, we can call them segulot. They're called in Jewish terminology, segulot means spiritual powers. You have to have two powers in order to bring down the Torah of Atik. What is Atik? The ancient one. It's called in the book of Daniel, Atik Yomin, the ancient of days, the ancient one. What is the ancient one? In the esoteric traditions, the ancient one is called the solar logos. I'm saying that is the logos of who is in charge of the evolution of the planet Earth. This sounds like a pretty, what's the word, polytheistic teaching. If it sounds polytheistic to you, it is. There's many, 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 many gods in this cosmos, but we're mostly concerned only with the God of heaven and earth. That's the one we're concerned with, which is a binary God, which is non-binary. And so it is a God that is hermaphroditic, or what's the other word, androgynous. So that's just a footnote. Now the name of that God is Atik, the Holy Ancient One. And it's called the Holy Ancient One because it is beyond, it precedes, it is prior to time. So in relation to, it's ancient in relation to everything else. It's as ancient as this earth. And it's as ancient as probably manifests through the Big Bang or something like that. That's to say, so it manifests from there, but it appears as solar logos only when the earth comes into existence in that particular Shemitah. Because we have to, I think, for the Torah of the future, you have to get over this linear time model, which traps us in the sense that we are finite beings who manifest only chad pami, for one time, rather than forms of sparks of divine light, sparks of the Or Ein Sof, of the infinite Ein Sof, which are recycling over and over and over. That's what Gilgalim is recycling of divine light that appears, burns for a certain period of time, returns to some place where it recovers its energy, and then gets re-equipped for another cycle. And by the way, of course, the biggest joke of all is that this has already happened. We just don't know it yet. Right? I mean, that's really the biggest joke of all is this has all really happened. Here's another bad joke. I hope you'll forgive me for some bad jokes, but it's actually a true story. My friend Yehudis Fishman, when I was living in Boulder, one time, Lo Aleinu, she got in a car accident. She drove this old jalopy around because she lives on the level of Masah and Matan Bemunah, so she wasn't worried. She didn't think she had to have the latest vehicle. She riding this old junker around, and she was following the lights, and some not very awake person in another car rammed into her car. But she told me afterwards that she saw the whole thing before it happened. The whole thing. She heard the collision, everything that happened, she saw before it happened. There was a time lapse. So there's this is actually not even mystical. This is neuroscience can explain the nature of an experience like that. So I just presented as an asmachta to the point that what I'm saying is not as crazy as one might think. That's to say that we're already ahead of ourselves. We're already in the future to where we think we are, to where we think our experience is occurring. So this is the revealing of the Torah of the future depends on these two cities. What are the two cities? By the way, what are we, Alina, what time are we supposed to finish this shiur today? In 10 minutes?
No, whenever you
Okay,
want.
well, it's too bad. Actually, we could have. Well, anyway, we'll do it. One of these days, we'll do Shavuot shiur. I don't know how many of you will stay with me, but we'll do like a 24-hour Shavuot one of these days. And anyway, so to reveal the Torah of Atid, which is called the Oraita de Atika Stima, it means the concealed Atik. It's concealed because I said before that Shavuot is the level of Ayin. Ayin is the level of Keter. Keter has two partsufim. We talked about Arich Anpin means the level of in which no anger is possible because there's no impatience there because it knows everything all at once immediately. By the way, I just wanted to share this with Sheikh Dana Densmore, my friend, who I have the highest respect for. And I was one time looking into, I wanted to see what Mershi Chazal Inayat Khan had to say about reincarnation, because I knew he was in a tough spot. He was in a tough spot because he was a Chisti, he was an Indian Sufi, and in India, just about everybody believes in reincarnation, but if you're an Orthodox Muslim, you're not supposed to believe in reincarnation. It was just like Orthodox Christians, they don't believe it. Most Orthodox Jews don't even know about it, although it's become more, Gilgulim has become more known. So anyway, I was just, well, what? Because I thought, oh, no, Chasvad and Ad Khan, you could put him up there with the Baal Shem Tov and with the ascended masters, the very ones that that we want to invoke blessings from. And so I knew that he knew, but I didn't know how he would teach it, right? There's a question I wondered, what would he say? And so I found a place where he gave a whole thing. It was a beautiful sort of explanation of how reincarnation would totally make sense. And then he concluded, it was like a fatwa, right? And he concludes and he says, but we don't believe in it. And then he gives the explanation why he doesn't believe in it. And when I read it, I was just struck, wow, it was so incredibly deep. The explanation he gave, the way I understood it, at least, he was saying, it's because if you really understood the nature of time, you would know that the whole picture is spontaneously manifest all at once. So it's already all there. So from that perspective, there's what Gilgulim. It's like all one. So it was very, like one of the almost shockingly brilliant ways to sort of say it and not say it. Anyway, that's just an aside that I wanted to share. So in this tradition, if you want to, and here, look why this is very important. Somebody's saying, why is this very important? Because the bottom line for us is that we are not here to return to Tohu. We're not here for non-existence. We're not here to return to to the nothing that was before. There was something. We are here, Lishkon Haaretz. We are here to establish the Shekhinah on the earth. We are here to aid the evolution of the earth, which means to enable the Shekhinah to be present as the divinization, as the revealing of the inherent divine nature of the earth itself. And in order to bring down this Torah, as Reb Nachman says, you need to have, this is based on the Zohar, you need to have a few things. And I'm going to try to line this out. I won't be able to do the whole thing. We might do another second shiur on this sometime, because it's like such a fantastic teaching. As he says, Kamosh Katuv Irgi Burim Allah Hacham. You need to have a Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, the issue is, which we have to make clear, is that every single one of us has a nitzotz of Moshe Rabbeinu. So it's not like the Mashiach consciousness as a potentiality is present in every single one of us. But it is not the case that every single one of us is an embodiment of the Neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu. We're embodiments of sparks from the Neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu. But in this, the lineage that we have basically says that you need to have in the world, I think my sister, who's a very high seer and high neshama, was saying the other, was talking about the issue which Kirpal Singh was talking about in the video that I posted on our website. But Kirpal Singh, by the way, I consider to be an ascended master, is also like someone who did unbelievably beautiful work in the world when he was embodied. But in the Radhaswami tradition, they say very decisively, you have got to have an embodied master to work with. If you don't have an embodied master, you can't really form a mandala that has any power. And the problem is that there's only rare times really that there's an neshama that like that magnitude is actually present in the world. When you have someone of that magnitude, you're talking about the Baal Shem Tov. That is one way of understanding the great question that many scholars ask: how did it happen? If you look at the history of the Jews in Eastern Europe, there's nothing very special there until the 18th century. I mean, it's nothing that great. There's nothing like a Baal Shem Tov there. And however many centuries the Ashkenazim were there in Eastern Europe, and there's maybe 5, 6, maybe 7 centuries, until the beginning of the 18th century, all of a sudden this Heilige Baal Shem Tov shows up. And the question they ask is, how is it within 1 century, all of a sudden you have all these tzaddikim, you have all these enlightened beings, and that ray, the power of the ray of the neshama of the Baal Shem Tov, which came down at that time, was only in the world for 60 years. But the impact, the regime of the Baal Shem Tov lasted for like maybe another 60 years. After that, Hasidism became institutionalized, and it isn't really the same thing. And so my understanding was how it happened is because that's how great the neshama of the Baal Shem Tov was. Then you have a neshama like that is actually embodied. But these neshamas, you can get their help after they're in this world. You can invoke their help. You can ask them for addition, and they will help you. But the real power depends on actually being having somebody who's really embodied, and that we don't always have that. So most of the time, we've got to do what we're doing. As I say, we're invoking the Baal Shem Tov, we're invoking the neshama of Reb Nachman. You can invoke Chazor Inayat Khan, you can invoke any of the Buddhas, you can invoke Lord Krishna, you can invoke whoever comes to you as a reflection of that consciousness of the Torah of the future. Because that's ultimately what we're talking about. I mean, what is the consciousness of Mashiach? What is the consciousness of the Torah of the future? So whoever represents for you the embodiment of that consciousness, if they've ascended, you can be sure that they're there to still help us. But you have to have at least a bechina of Moshe Mashiach. To have a bechina of Moshe Mashiach, you need to have a mandala. Now, mandala means, it goes like this. The kabel, yuchal lekabel Torah, you're able to receive the Torah if you have someone in the place of Moshe Mashiach, Yechol HaMshich, who can draw down the illumination of Torah, Lilamed Sha'ar B'nei Adam. You have to and give it over to a certain circle of students. In order to reveal the Torah of the future, you have to be able to enact a yichud between the Blessed Holy One and the Shekhinah. Said that the sun and the moon energy, and their yichud, I'm going to shorten this, their yichud, al yidei hala at nafshut Yisrael b'chinat ma'in nukbin. It requires these two powers. One power is the power to elevate the souls so that they have the effect of what's called ma'in nukbin. He said, which is that my nukmin means literally female energy, which means really the energy that rises up, that elevates from the earth. It elevates from below. That is called, because the Kuchibrichu is Tiferet, is represented by the sun. The Shekhinah is the Levana, is the moon, or the earth, even deeper. And really, I think the best way is to think of the Shekhinah as Gaia, as the earth goddess, the goddess of the earth, and all of those powers that are being manifested at all times through her, and all of those powers that are potentially present within her and have yet to manifest. And so that energy, you have to, first of all, the Rebbe or the Tzaddik has got to connect. The Rebbe or the Tzaddik has got to connect the souls of those who form the mandala with the presence of the Shekhinah. And so in order to be you can't be in the mandala unless you are aware of the Shekhinah. What is aware? It means you have to be able to feel the presence right where you are. Then you can form the mandala. But then, so each individual has to go, and this is like actually the first time, Reb Chaim Leib will probably remember this, that the first time we brought Reb Zalman to Bloomington, and he gave a talk at that synagogue there. And the first thing he said, I remember this, he came in and he said, okay, everybody connect yourself to the presence of God, however you do that. That's the first thing he said when we walked in the room. Now, I don't know, which was sort of like a shocking thing, considering I think only 2 or 3 of us even knew Zalman at that time. But we managed to get an oilim there for him. And that's the first thing he said. He said, okay, everybody connect yourself to the presence of God. So I don't know how many people did anything, but I have a feeling the impact, the shock of the statement itself probably woke up a few people. But that's the issue. You have to be able to connect yourself. You have to you got to wake up to the presence. You got to feel that that you are surrounded. You are on Admat Kodesh. You are on the Holy Land. You right where you are is the Holy Land, and you have this structure around you, this structure that's made of divine light and divine energy, and you are in the center of that. You can feel that. You have to be able to feel that. You can visualize the light in different colors, but I'm not going to go into that right now because there's different things you can do with it. But the important thing is you have to be able to be there, present to the presence in that body, in that energy cocoon that you are, where you are present standing. Then you have to have somebody who's able to elevate all of those souls as my nukmi, which is called Lokech Nefashot the Hacham. The Hacham takes the souls, V'al Yidei HaYichud Nolad Torah. If the Hacham is able to elevate those souls, has to be able to take them. Where does the Hacham have to be able to take them? Has to be able to take him up to Keter. You have to be able to take him to that iron place. You have to take him not only to Arich Anpin, you have to be able to take him all the way up to Atika. You have to be able to take him, elevate them all up to Atik. So all of the individuals in the mandala, they manifest the presence of being present to the present. And the person who's in the form, who's taking the place of, who's Bimkom Shimon Bar Yochai, Reb Nachman, Moshe Rabbeinu, the Baal Shem Tov HaKodesh, has the level of Keter, has the level of Ayin. That's what I mentioned before, which is the level that is available to us right at this very moment. The Yom HaShavuot. So if we can elevate, we can all elevate through the power of the presence of the Baal Shem Tov, who opens the gate, the window to the level of Atik. Reb Nachman says, Al Yidei Zeh, says, Al Yidei HaYichud Zeh Nolad Torah. This is what, it's through the Torah of the future is literally born, because what we're doing, what the Mangala does, a Yichud is, for want of a better term, it's a Hieronymus Gamos, to use a fancy term. I one time in an early paper that I was given an opportunity to write in Israel, it was in a journal in English, I used for Yichud, Yichudim, and I translated copulations, and they made me take the translation out of the article. I wasn't allowed to use that term. But that's like, if you read any Kabbalist, it's explicit in the text, as it is explicit in the iconography of Vajrayana Buddhism or any Indian religion. They have whole temples that are just depicting this is like intercourse between a male, a god, and a goddess. That's what it is. It's and why that image is relevant is because something comes of it. It's productive. Something is born from that unification. And what is born from that unification is Matan Torah. That's the gift of the Torah. I'm just thinking a little more of this is probably going to be enough for us today, and then may just finish up, because this is just so deep, and I don't know, I can't, the way we're set up, I can't see everybody, so I don't know like how people are doing with this. I don't know, maybe if I switch to gallery. Okay. Oh, good. I didn't see Adrian. Adrian, hi. I want to say hello to you. So happy you're here. Andrew. Yecheskel. Reb Yecheskel. Josh is here. Avram Wagman. Good to see you. Jonathan Stoller. David Gaskell. Nancy Epstein. Haven't seen you in years as far as I remember. I hope you don't mind if I pause here just for a second. I hope that Panim Lepanim, the Heiliger, you see there's someone there who looks like Martin Buber, but he's actually the Holy Chazan. He's more than a Holy Chazan. He's very, very, one of my deepest, oldest friends, Signoris Formis, has joined us. So happy to see Miriam Levy. I want you to know, whatever it looks like, I'm thrilled that you are here. I love you so much, and I'm so that you would take your time and energy to join us is more than a COVID for me. Thank you for being here. Okay. Ariel Tzvia Lippman, thank you for being here. And of course, Claire, it's a special blessing that you can be with us. Thank you for being here. And did I say welcome to Chaim Leib? Chaim Leib was one of my oldest friends. I don't think he'll feel disrespected. I hope if I say he was my first chassid in the whole world. And in a way, he is still my first chassid. He's my right arm, the arm of chesed, the man of blessing. I just want everybody to know, if you feel that you're under a deen, I highly recommend that you get in touch with Chaim Leib. You can get get in touch with Chaim Leib, and you'll get the bracha that you need to get. So be it, and so it is. Amen. Okay, now, so we're going to finish this up. The first thing was we have to have the power to elevate to the level of ayin, to the space that is beyond all the mazalot, that is not subject to limited karma, is not subject to ordinary hashgacha. We want to elevate to the place of hashgacha shlema, because hashgacha shlema, the place where the consciousness is on the level of hashgacha shlema, is the space of ayin, the space of atik, and the highest level of atik. The atik has 3 heads, and the highest is called the Reisha Delai Chada. That's the consciousness that is impossible to be reduced to anything within our ordinary range of understanding. Because that space and the energy that comes through that space can override any gezerah. It can really, it's a karma breaker. It's a great karma breaker. It's where we really can, we can bring down Mashiach consciousness, which is the consciousness of the Torah of the future. It means we can foresee, we can envision, we get a power to see the way it will be in the future. And by virtue of being able to see the way it will be in the future, there's a tremendous chizuk for emunah. It's like our faith, our emunah is tremendously strengthened because we're seeing the future. It's like when you don't have hashgacha shlema, you can't see the future. You trust. You are going to have to trust in hashgacha pratit, but since you don't have hashgacha shlema, there's a terrible consequence. The terrible consequence is when you don't have hashgacha shlema, you have ordinary hashgacha. Then when there's a terrible charon af in the world, when there's really horrible conditions in the world, which is called divine displeasure, the Gemara, the Kabbalah tells us that when that's the case, and this was a teaching that Piazetzner Rebbe was very deeply into. This was a Rebbe during the dark days in the Warsaw Ghetto during the Holocaust. And he was very into this, revealing this teaching. And basically it says that when things are so bad, HaKadosh Baruch Hu can't take it. And so has to, occlude itself. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes into a special secret chamber and can't watch what is happening, can't bear to see what is happening. And when that occurs, the hashgacha is called nature. It's called the law of nature. And it means that all the karmic causes are just going to play out. There's nothing that can intervene or intercede to mitigate, to sweeten the judgment. The karma plays out, and then the hashgacha prati, the direct viewing of the process of the evolution of the earth and the evolution of the human consciousness is restored. So hashgacha shlema is a very, very, if we can get any access at all to hashgacha shlema, it's a very powerful thing, because it means that we can draw down from the future a more advanced level of evolution. Which means we can draw more kindness into the space as it is. We can draw down more divine providence right into the conditions as they are. So this is a very precious opportunity. And in order to do it, it's just that you have to be able to elevate all parts. The issue is that the ratzon, in order to be in the mandala, you have to have be able to be in the state of recognizing the presence of the presence. You need one other qualification, and that is ratzon. You have to really want to be there, and you have to want to really elevate to atik. So to get the energy, to be capable of being elevated, you have to have inside your heart the deepest desire for hashgacha prati, the deepest desire for the divine to come down. When I say the divine to come down, what comes down is the Torah of the future. So you have to have the deepest desire for the Torah of the future to come down and be strengthened. And that is a certain power, a certain city, a certain skula that a tzaddik has to have, which is represented by the shin that has 3 heads on it. You know that on the tefillin shel rosh, there's a shin on one side that has a 3-headed shin, and there's a 4-headed shin. Those represent the 2 powers. The 3-headed shin is the power to elevate all the souls that want to ascend through the gate of Keter to the level of the Reisha Elat Chayyim, so that they can become partners in the birth of the Torah of the future. And the 4-headed shin, which is on the other side of the Bayit Shel Rosh of the tefillin, is the second power, which is the power to actually bring down the Torah from above to below. And what's the difference between the two? The difference is only this. The 3-pronged shin refers to the 3 walls of the armon that are painted that are pre-painted for us by the divine will that we spoke of in the story that was told by the original Rebbe. And that's the allure, the beauty of those 3 walls and all of their riches are what draws the Tavad Mammon, the desire for riches in this world, to ascend to the world above. And to see that everything that is really beautiful, that is really desirable, is above, is not what we're seeing outside, but what we can see inside. If we turn inside, rest in the presence, and have the will, have the ratzon to ascend to the source from which all those wonderful things happen. That elevates the will. And that power of elevation is called the angel Nuriel, the angel of light, of hot light, which is the root of that has to be elevated from below, where we get stuck thinking that all that we desire is below. But actually, the root of that desire is in a place where it can find all that it really desires, if it could only calm down the heat of the lower will and have the will to ascend to where the source of everything really is. That angel takes us up there. It was called the angel Nuriel. And from there, there is an angel that brings the Torah down, and that is called the angel Metatron or Mitad. The angel Mitad. Metatron is called Metatron or Mitad Sar HaPanim. And if you take the letters of the first letters of Metatron, Sar HaPanim, you get Mem, Shin, He, which are what? That's the letters of the name Moshe, because that angel Metatron, that's the power that Moshe Rabbeinu has, or the Moshe soul, the Mashiach consciousness has to bring down the Torah of the future. And when that Torah of the future starts to descend, when the Metatron energy draws down the gift, the giving of the Torah of the future, it does so by pulling the veil over the fourth wall. And it reveals the wall that reveals everything that's below. And that's the consciousness that comes down. And what happens in the process is that, why does it have 4 heads and not 3? Because the 3 heads are at the highest level are Keter, Chachma, or Chabad, Chachma, Bina, and Dat. Keter is above that, above the 3 heads. And the dot opens up into Hasidism and Kabbalah, into both goodwill, the will for goodness, and the Ratzonot that have been standing in the way of those wills of goodness, the goodwill, the will for goodness. Because every Ratzon, even how great the desire we have to ascend, you're going to ascend with your whole heart and soul. And there isn't a heart and soul in any embodied being on this planet that doesn't have chasadim and gevurot. You can't have anybody that's that's just totally reached the level, the highest level. These are the avatar presences that almost never incarnate. And even those presences, when they do incarnate, they have to go through some process of remembering who they are. Moshe Rabbeinu has to go through certain tests before he realizes who he is. Same thing with Shimon Bar Yochai, the same thing with the Baal Shem Tov. There's a learning process. The only difference is that when they finish their learning, they remember everything. And we only remember some of it. But they remember everything. That's why they can take us all the way back. You see, on the special days when we can connect them, they can take us all the way back because they remember how to get there. They know where it is. So we want to be elevated. We join, that's the keter. You make a hit kashrut with the tzaddik ador. It's like it's a tremendous blessing. Because it has to be a soul that remembers how to get really much higher than we can remember how to get back to ourselves. So in that process, the Ratzonot, negative ritzonot get purified through this ascension to the ayin, which is the mazal. And so the source of energy that is beyond the stars. Now I'm just gonna, because this is a very long shiur, I'm gonna jump ahead and just to a story. And just a little story, and I think we're going to end with this story for today. And just add a piece that we'll explain maybe some other time when we'll convene the mandala, and we'll do more, God willing. And I just note for now that what in this process, there is a tikkun for the two merkavot, for the upper merkava and the lower merkava. But I'm just noting that I don't want to explain all the details of that. I want to go to a story that comes at the end that Reb Nachman brings from the Gemara at the end and tells it towards the end of Torah 13. Okay, this story comes from the Gemara. It says, Masechet Ta'anit, page 23b. It's a story about Rabbi Yonah. And here's the story. The Gemara says, Kad hava itzterich al milimitra, is whenever, during Rabbi Yonah's lifetime, if the world needed rain, Amar, Rabbi Yonah would say, Azil va'aiti bezuza ibura, is I'm going to go and buy a certain amount of grain for azuz, for a certain amount of money. Vahavi ka'i ba'atra amika, and he would go and stand in a very deep place. Ba'atra tzniya, in a place of concealment. Mikse saka, and he was covered himself in sackcloth. Va'al yidei zeh va'ate mitra, and by doing that, the rain would come. And that's the story. That's the mashal. Now, what's the nafkamina? What does this mashal mean? Reb Nachman says, Kad hava mitzricham, when the world needed rain, Reb Nachman says, what is rain? You've heard of Gishmei Brachot, right? The rain of blessings. What is rain? Rain is Torah. Torah is the rain that comes, it's the water that comes from above, because Chachma is mayim, Chachma is water, and the Torah is Chachma. So Reb Nachman says, the Gemara, it was just like the parables of Jesus, that it has to, it doesn't let the cat out of the bag. You have to be on a certain level to really get what it's talking about. Otherwise, it just sounds like some kind of quaint story. So here's the meaning. He says, when the world needed rain, it says the need for Torah. How do we know that it's Torah? Because in Deuteronomy 32b, it says, Ya'arov kamatar likhe, may my teaching rain down come down like rain. So the lekach, the teaching of God, is the Torah. So Amar Azil va'aiti bezuze ibura. Ibur is this kind of grain in Aramaic. So Reb Nachman says this ibur, he says, I'd go and buy for a small amount this ibur. Or the ibur is grain, but if you look at the word ibura, Reb Nachman points out it has the letters Ayin Bet, Reis Yud Vav. Ayin Bet means shikuch, means calming down. It means the power, the ruach that puts out the fire for personal self-interest. Why? Because the Av is 72, and 72 is the gematria for Chesed. Chesed is 72. Samach 68 and 4. It's Samach Het and Dalet, so it's 72. So Av is the Shema in bed is a name that expresses the power of kindness, the power of Chesed, and that's Shikuch, that it is the influence that calms the heart. Reish Yud Vav refers to the heat. And the zuzah, the coin refers to the power for wealth. So, which means that he was going to put out the fire of this desire for mammon, to eliminate this form of avodah zarah in the world, because as long as you have that, you have charonaf in the world. As long as you have charonaf in the world, there's so much contention and self-interest that there isn't any way that the Torah can come into a world like that, because there's no one to receive it. You go and stand in a deep place. Reb Nachman says, Al Yidei Shekek Tavot, by virtue of easing shikuach, this burning desire of self-interest, Zachala Atra Mika, he was able to reach a very deep place. So he's saying is this self-interest, the egocentric desire, is on the surface of the heart. And as long as it is running us, we don't have access to the depths of our own heart. But to the extent that you can chill, and you can calm down that burning need for something that you think you need, you become deeper. You enter into a deeper space. So the chesed, shikek tavat mamon, and that got him into a deeper place, which is the space of chesed. That is where love comes from, this deep space in the heart. We're going to be anybody's whose consciousness is being dominated by the energies on the surface of their heart is going to be self-interested, and they're not going to be able to emanate and share the chesed, the kindness, the loving kindness that comes from the depths of the heart. And he says, Al Yidei the chesed, this chesed, that kindness that's in the depths of the heart, which he was then able to access, through that, he created the bayit. And that's what the bayit is, the space, is the temple consciousness, the consciousness of being a divine being that is in a holy place. And they said he was in a concealed place. What is the Atra Tzaniya? What is the concealed place? That is the inner temple. That's the Beit HaMikdash. That's the Beit HaMikdash, not the one that people think exists or should exist in some place, but it is that holy space which within which your true self, who you already are in the future, is present. The holy place that your true self, that you are already in the future, is present. That you find yourself in that place, in that holy place. And he covered himself in sackcloth. And this says the sackcloth is the fact that he surrounded himself, because the secret of elevating. I want to share this with everyone precisely, not only because we need to form our mandala and do this work together, but each of us, to the extent that you can learn how to do it, you each have to do this. You have to form your own mandala. Not only you have to form your own mandala, you got to find somebody at least 20 years younger than you and teach this to them. Because we're not going to be here that much longer. So we got to do what we can here, but we have to make sure that we leave the secret of the mandala, the secret of the powers that are required in order to bring the Torah of the future down to earth in the hands and hearts of those who are going to do it after we have ascended and can only help from above. So what is the sackcloth? He wrapped himself in sackcloth. The sackcloth is the presence of all the souls in the mandala that he elevated with, because he can't do it alone. Why is it called sak? Because midrashically it's the letter in sak is the same letter as in mashka, for example. It's a three letter, can be pronounced either like a shin or a sin. So he's saying they are the ones, when those souls are elevated and the desire for mammon is burned out of them by the angel Nuriel, they experience the delight of being watered by the Torah from above. It's the nachal adanecha tashkem. As you say, we say it in the morning. If you don't say any blessing in the morning or do any davening, just do Maya karchazdecha Elohim b'nei uvnei adam b'tzel kenefecha yosayim. How yakar, how precious, Mayakar, is your chesed, is your love. Mayakar chazdecha, God, how precious your chesed is. Mayakar chazdecha uvnei adam b'tzel, human beings can b'tzel under the shadow of your wings, so they can take refuge. We can take refuge in the shadow of your wings. We go on and say, Ki imcha makor chayim, you're the source of chayim. Be'orcha, it's your light that we're seeing light. It's your light that we're seeing. Mishok chazdecha, draw down that chesed. Mishok chazdecha liyodecha, to those who have da'at, to those who are in the state of hashgacha shlema, who are in the feedback loop, who are seeing you, seeing them. Mishok chazdecha liyodecha v'sitchatcha, and your righteousness. Hashkot bedeshen metecha, water them, is the line that I wanted to emphasize. The hashka'ah, water them with the fullness. So the sak is the hashka'ah, mishakya, nachala, the nachalot, the streams of chesed that flow down from above are watering the souls that are able to be elevated to that place. And you satisfy them with the pure light, the consciousness of purest soul light by means of this. And by means of this, he brought Torah down. in the sense of the verse that says, V'yored oz mivtecha. He draws down power from the secure place, mivtecha, the place where it is kept and the place within which we trust. And if you want the rest of the story, you can go to the Likutei Moharan 13. I think that's really all that we need today. So I just would pause before we really draw to a complete end. I just would like everyone to think about the vision of the holy space, the holy palace, the palace of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shkinte, the palace in which the wedding of the Holy One and the Shekhinah takes place, where they come together and through their union, which we witness by being here at this auspicious moment, with our good wills raised up, elevated, ascended as high as the soul of the Holy Baal Shem Tov can raise us. To the place where our souls and all souls can be watered, can receive the rain of blessing that flows down through their union within our consciousness. As we draw that veil, which enables our consciousness to become the fourth wall of the palace, within which everything that is wonderful, everything that exists in the world appears in the most beautiful, highest, most wonderful, most satisfying, most delightful, most joyful, most nourishing, most healing way. So be it, so be it, Ken Yiratzon. I ask everyone to hold this vision in their heart. And when you have absorbed it as deeply as you can, please allow it to come through as your deepest, deepest goodwill. Share this light, this consciousness, this Torah with everyone you see that can possibly receive it. Amen. V'amen. Ken Yiratzon. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks for this beautiful Torah. Thank you so much for helping with the elevation of all those souls who had the goodwill, the kindness to join us to form this mandala. May we have many, many more opportunities. And if you're eating dairy and have cheesecake, enjoy your cheesecake in whatever form that takes for you, and share it with everyone you possibly can. Vegan cheesecake for those in the future. Peace. Thank you very much. I hope to see you again very, very soon.
Thank
Lots
you.
of love and blessings to everyone.